Christopher Rupert, Windermere, Vladimir, Carl Alexander, Francois Reginald, Lancelot Herman, Herman, Gregory James is giving up all.
Hey everyone, it's Jonathan and welcome back to our Rodgers Hammerstein Cinderella miniseries. All month, Lisa Faye and I are looking at the three versions of this story, and today we're doing the actual original from 1957 starring Julie Andrews as Cinderella. I don't have much to say by way of introduction. If you listen to the first episode, you know that the 1997 version starring Whitney Houston and Brandy is the one I grew up with. I wasn't even aware this one existed until years later, so this was the first time I'd ever watched it.
I wish I hadn't married Sam. Pull in your little diaphragm. I wear a gown of satin jade. And me, I'm in a pink brocade.
And me, I'm in the second grade.
The prince is giving us all. The prince is giving us all. He's a royal highness, Christopher Rupert, son of Her Majesty Queen Constantina, Charlotte Ermintrude, Guinevere Maisie, Marguerite Anne is giving up all.
So before I suggested these, did you know that there were multiple versions of the Rodgers and Hammerstein Cinderella?
It's interesting you say that because since we started this project, I didn't really actually know that there was a whole subset of Rodgers and Hammerstein's Cinderella. Like, I know that that's what the Brandy version was called, Rodgers and Hammer, like that was the official title, but it didn't really click in my brain that that's because there were other ones. And so as I was researching and looking at the versions we're going to talk about, I was like, dang, there's a lot of these. And so, no, I did not. Oh, yeah.
Like I grew up with the Brandy version, so that's the version that I knew. And it wasn't until years later that I realized that there was, well, I thought there was only one other version because I remember reading something about Julie Andrews having a version. And I think I just thought that that's the one that was in the 60s. But then when I started researching for this series, I realized, no, wait, the one in the 60s has somebody totally different. So where's the Julie Andrews one? And then I found out the Julie Andrews one is even older. It was from the 50s. And then there's other versions that are only on the stage. Like I think it's been redone at least once for the stage, but of course multiple versions of that as well.
Right.
Like I didn't realize how popular and how many times this specific version of Cinderella had been made or remade. I wish they would record more of the ones that are on the stage. Like I know people don't like to record the ones on the stage because, like, you've got to see it in person, but like I can't see it in person, so record it so I can see it too.
Exactly.
I'd be interested to see the different versions that are on stage.
Yes, because they're all slightly different. Not all of them include the same songs. You know, they all have different interpretations, and especially at the beginning, that's what I found. And I'm very fascinated. Like this has opened up a whole new rabbit hole fascination for me because I'm like, now I want to watch the rest of the Rodgers and Hammerstein one just to see how everybody interprets it differently.
Yeah, it's
interesting. And what like the Julie Andrews one, the copy that I saw on YouTube is she had like even a little intro about it with a little history of it, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah, apparently that version hadn't been seen for years because at the time that one was done, things were not recorded. Like I knew this from doing other things because there's like this entire podcast started doing versions of Alice in Wonderland, and there were so many versions that I would find on like IMDb where it'd be like one still photograph and maybe a cast list, and it's like that no footage remains of all these different ones. So back then these would be performed live and not recorded. Like I don't think they even at the very beginning they didn't even have the technology to do that.
Yeah.
And then even when they did, this another thing that I've run into, like when I became a fan of Doctor Who, there's a ton of episodes of Doctor Who that don't exist anymore because the BBC didn't think, well, even not really many people did think about reruns. Like things aired once and then they moved on to the next thing and then they reused the tape.
Yeah.
Which seems ridiculous to me, but there's so many shows from back then that just don't exist anymore.
I know, now to think about it, it's horrifying. You're like, wait, you did what?
Yes. It
Why didn't
is.
you just grab a new one?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I thought that was very interesting because it was, an older Julie Andrews, and she did this whole like history of it where CBS wanted to do this live broadcast and brought in Rodgers and Hammerstein to write everything, and they performed it live
Hmm.
on air, which that used to be a thing, and I used to love that as a kid. It was just that mix of like excitement but also anxiety because you're like, oh my god, what if they mess up? And it was just, I remember those big events where they're like, and a lot of like they even happen in like sitcoms where like, we're gonna have this episode, this special episode, we're gonna do it live in front of an audience. And I was like, so I kind of missed that. So it was really cool to think like this showed, and everybody probably made an event and sat around and watched it, because she said something like over 1 million viewers tuned in that night or something, which I thought was amazing. Or maybe it was more than that. Anyways, I just thought it was really cool. I thought the history of it was really cool.
Yeah. And as far as I know, for a while, I don't think anyone even realized that this still existed somewhere.
Yeah.
And the only reason we have it now is because they found a recorded kinescope, which that was the thing that I had to learn about, of a dress rehearsal. So apparently a kinescope is a recording of a television program or motion picture film directly through a lens focused on the screen of a video monitor.
Oh my gosh.
So somebody had a video camera pointed at at the screen while they were doing this dress rehearsal, and that's how this was saved.
So that's not even the live performance. That's a dress
No,
rehearsal?
this was a dress rehearsal.
Then it was really, really good. It was a really good rehearsal, because
it
I had
really
no
was.
idea.
Yeah.
Wow. That's cool. That's
Yeah.
even better.
Apparently before they had the technology, which they call it a quadruplex videotape, which must be how they record live and film at the same time. It says kinescopes were the only practical way to preserve live television broadcasts prior to videotape. So for years, this had never even been seen. And then somebody must have found it, and then they released it on DVD.
God, can you imagine? Like, you're just rifling through things and you're like, what is this? Pop it in. What? Oh my gosh. Yes. It would have blown my mind.
Yeah. And apparently it did air in color, but they could not record in color at this point. So all we've got is the black and white kinescope.
Interesting. I mean, I don't mind the black and white. I know my kids are, whenever I have the black and white out, they're like, really? Like, yes, respect the culture. But I didn't mind it. I mean, it was obviously like, I don't know the technical names. I don't know the technical features of it all, but you could tell it was flat, like even more so than your standard, like, hey, we've recorded this, for television.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't mind it, because it's Julie Andrews singing
it was
the part of Cinderella. Yes, for sure.
And there were other parts too. Like, I could tell that this wasn't, like, obviously Julie Andrews, and most of the main characters were like really good. But like all the side people, it almost felt like just some random people putting on a play. Like the beginning in the princess giving a ball scene, all the townspeople talking about how the things that they were wishing.
Yes.
They didn't seem like professional actors, but I liked that.
Yes, you're right. The charming is a very good word for it. Actually, for every one of these that we've watched so far for this series, they've all been super charming in their own way. But yes, this felt very cozy, very just like intimate, because you're right. There were scenes where it wasn't on the set. It was just probably someone in front of just in front of like a pulled down like photo screen or something behind it, just doing this real quick bit, and then they would cut to another one and cut to another one. But it felt very one-on-one, like it was just me with them. You know what I mean? Like I liked it. I liked that aspect of it.
I think my favorite part in that was the girl, but me, I'm in the second grade, when they're talking about wishing to get to go to the ball and meet the prince, and that girl was my favorite. all
these adult women are just getting ready or doing various things, and they're like, I hope he proposes to me, and I hope he proposes to me, and then there's that little girl, and I'm only in the second grade. It was very cute.
And I also love the town crier guy, who is, when he's like giving the proclamation, and then when the various people are questioning the names of the royal family, how mad he gets. That
Yes.
cracks me up.
Right, because there's, I guess it's, well, I don't say I guess, I know it's one of the songs that is the same in these
Mhm.
versions where they, the prince is throwing a ball, and then they announce all of his names, all like 7 or 8 of them.
Uh-huh.
And I don't remember what it was, but he's like Norman or Herman.
One of them was Sydney, and I don't remember if that was the father or the son.
Yeah, I don't remember because there was a bunch of them. I don't remember. I'm sorry. I feel bad because I probably should have taken a note on this because it did make me laugh, and I don't remember which version it was. But one of them later, somebody like I think it's Cinderella talking to the prince saying, "Well, yeah, because you're," and she goes to say all of the names, and he's like, "Yes, I know all of my names." He's like, "You can just call me Christopher." He's like, "I'm very aware of all of my names, and I do not use them all," which I thought was very funny.
Uh-huh. Well, after this opening scene, we follow Cinderella's family home, and you meet the stepsisters, who are probably my favorite characters. Like, they seem to be some of my favorite characters in all of these versions.
Right. They all bring something a little different. Yeah.
I think these ones are named Joy and Portia,
Mm-hmm.
and Portia was my favorite.
See, I love Joy because they named her Joy and she is so sullen. Like her face is so
Yes.
downturned the whole time. And now the first time I ever saw Alice Ghostly, the Joy is played by Alice Ghostly. And the first
Uh-huh.
time I'd ever saw her was in Greece. And of course, as a kid, as a teenager growing up, like I was obsessed with that movie and I watched it all the time. And she's the mechanic teacher in Greece. And I'm like, yes, that is Alice Ghostly. And I was just every time she was on screen, I was just enthralled because I was like, oh my gosh, it's her.
The other stepsister, Portia, was played by Kay Ballard, and I know the name Kay Ballard. I knew I'd seen her in something. I could not place where, so I started looking her up. I was like, wait a minute, Freaky Friday. She's the coach.
Oh my gosh. I would never have remembered that.
That was what I like. I haven't seen Freaky Friday in a while, but she was in the back of my head, and when I saw her in this, she came out. I was like, she's so weird and hilarious.
That is amazing.
You also get here In My Own Little Corner. I think this might be my favorite version of In My Own Little Corner. Just Julie Andrews is so good. Like overall, I think my favorite of the versions we've seen is the Brandy version, but there are parts where Julie Andrews' performance is my favorite. I think this is one of them.
I very much agree. Overall, I'm always going to pick the Brandy Whitney Houston version because it's Whitney Houston. Hello. But I mean, it's Julie Andrews singing. Her voice is
Yeah.
incredible and it's just top notch. And so of course, it's just an amazing performance. And yeah, that I think I agree with you too for that song. And plus the setting, like the scene, like the stage setup or whatever,
Mhm.
the background. I don't know, just I liked it. It really worked.
Yeah. And after this, we go back to the castle, and you have a song that I don't know if this was used in the Whitney Houston Brandy version or not. There's a scene similar, but the song is called Your Majesties, where the king and queen are planning the party,
Yeah.
and they're kind of weirdly hilarious.
It's very bizarre that because I don't remember it in the Brandy version, and I know it's not in the Leslie Ann Warren version.
I don't think this song is in the Brandy version, but they have a sort of similar scene.
Right, between Whoopi Goldberg and Victor Garber. Like they
Yes.
have a lot more, they show a lot more of their relationship in the Brandy version and in this version. There's a lot
Yeah.
more of the king and queen.
Yeah.
And which surprises me only because in the Leslie Ann Warren version, it's got Ginger Rogers, and I thought they would have used her more. But anyways, we'll get to that next, whenever we talk about that one. But yeah, I just thought it was they were very funny, and he's very stubborn and he's very cheap. He doesn't want to buy anything, and he's trying to fit into his old uniform that he hasn't worn in years, and it doesn't fit. And she's like, well, all you've done for the past 5 years is get bigger. And he's like, And he's all flustered, and they're talking about it, and she's like, look, you have to do things for people. And he's like, what? I don't do anything for them, and they still like me. And then she's like, do they really? And it's just such a funny exchange.
Yeah, I like the king and queen. And with this, of course, the prince doesn't actually want this ball, but he pretends to go along with it. Well, I mean, he does go along with it. He pretends to be okay with it for his mother's sake.
Yeah.
Then I was kind of surprised how quickly this all came together, but then this version is not much more than an hour.
Mm-hmm.
So you kind of transition directly from this to the kingdom getting ready and Cinderella's family getting ready. I was like, oh, well, they're moving this right along.
Yeah, like the ball is like that afternoon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you get a reprise of In My Own Little Corner as she's dreaming of the ball, and the fairy godmother shows up. I don't think I recognized the fairy godmother. She seemed familiar, Edie Adams, but I looked her up and I don't think I'd seen anything she was in.
Yeah, I did the same, and I didn't immediately recognize anything. I did think in all the versions I've seen, for me, it always seemed like the fairy godmother showing up was a surprise. Like, like, who are you? Like, what is happening? But in this one, it felt like they knew each other because Julie Andrews
she calls her godmother.
Hey.
The fact that she's magic seems to be the surprise.
Right. Which I thought was interesting. I thought that was a different way. And I thought, okay, well, if this is the first one that aired on TV, and I'm like, so is that the original interpretation? I don't know. I just thought it was very fascinating. Like, because she says, oh, godmother, you're here. Like, what are you doing here? And she's very sly, and she's like, oh, I just showed up. Hi, and nudge, nudge, wink, wink to the audience, like, hey, I'm magical. She just doesn't know it yet.
Yeah.
So I thought it was a bit strange.
Yeah, it was, but I also liked the fact that they knew each other because, I don't know, it gave their dynamic a little something more than some other fairy godmothers have when it's just like, oh, who are you?
Right. Because in reality, wouldn't you freak out if somebody just showed up and was like, I'll take you to the ball? What?
I think so, yeah.
Come on, I'll make you a magic vehicle, and you can get in and just trust that it's going to take you where you need to go. So, yeah, I guess that makes sense. It's better that she knew her, but it was just strange after years of just knowing this one way. I just thought it was strange. I was like, oh, they know each other. Oh, okay.
Yeah. There's a bunch of things about this particular scene that is kind of strange and unique to this version. Like all the things that she does, the magical things like turning the pumpkin into the carriage and even the mice, it's kind of Cinderella's idea, but she's just imagining impossible things because this is the song Impossible. And then the fairy godmother makes it happen, but it was Cinderella's idea in the first place. And
You're right, it was.
They kind of have this conversation about something like not relying too much on wishes and making sure you're doing what you can to help yourself, which is kind of going against what actually happens because like Cinderella couldn't have done this by herself, even though it was sort of her idea in a roundabout way.
Yeah, no, you're right, though, because it is her. It is Julie Andrews, stating, well, I saw a pumpkin out front. Wouldn't that make a great carriage, And the fairy godmother's just sitting there going, impossible. Every time she says, impossible.
Yeah. One other thing that I liked about this was that the fairy godmother actually takes her to the ball herself, which I don't think I've seen in any other version.
That's right, because she's like, I'm going with you and I'll drop you off. Yeah.
Which I thought was interesting. And they also make no special mention of the glass slippers. Like, obviously, there are still slippers because that's what the prince goes around trying on everybody. But, like, there's no special mention of them in this version.
Yes, you're right.
Which was interesting.
Yes, because later when she drops it, I'm like, we never even talked about those before. And then even later when because obviously this is not a spoiler. People know, at least I hope they know Cinderella. When they're trying them on everybody, I thought it was funny because there is one scene where somebody like steps on it or something and it bends. And I'm like, so it's vinyl. It's not glass. I'm like, okay.
Well, they never specifically stated,
that's right.
So maybe it's
You're
a vinyl
right.
shoe in this version.
You're right.
And I don't remember if I can't remember on other versions, like if they specifically show what time it is when they get there. But when they get there, the fairy godmother tells her to leave by midnight. But it's 11:30.
That's right. And I'm telling you, when I ran the clock watching, I'm like, this all has to go down, because it's by the time she gets there, or by the time they actually do everything, they show the clock and it's right before 11:35 p.m. And I'm like, this woman has 25 minutes to get all this done.
Yes.
Like, what? And then it cracked me up because as they're proceeding through all the songs that they sing for the ball, I'm like, okay, look, it's like 1 a.m. now. Like, there's no way that this is ridiculous. I did actually keep time because I'm like, no.
That pushed the bonds of believability a bit for me.
Because I mean, she has to go in and be introduced, and everybody stop and look at her, and she, and then of course the prince has to approach her, and they have to dance, and all that, and then they have to talk and sing, and I'm like, no, not in 25 minutes. This is ridiculous.
Well, I think that they tried to write that into the script because after all that's happened, then they sang the song 10 minutes ago. So basically all that happened in 10 minutes according to the movie.
Yeah, and I'm like, I don't believe you.
Yes.
Because that staircase was huge, and I'm like, it would take you 10 minutes just to get down that staircase.
Plus, you had to get up a staircase outside too. So
Yes.
there's a lot of stairs.
For real. And then it wasn't even just those two interacting. There were also other songs of other characters. And I'm like, yeah, this is longer than 25 minutes, but whatever. And to think that like in 25 minutes, they did all that and fall in love, and he doesn't know her name.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it's one of those things with fairy tales. You just kind of have to go with it.
yes.
But I tend to overthink some things especially when it seems this impossible.
Exactly. I know that impossible can be possible. Thank you, Cinderella and Fairy Godmother. But no, I was just like, because
They
think
wrote
in this,
in all the loopholes.
yes. I'm like, how are you in love? You don't even know her name. But okay, sure. It's fairy tale reasoning.
Yes. And I think probably my favorite part of all of this is the song with the stepsisters, which I found out is called the Stepsisters Lament. I probably said this before in the Brandy version, but I don't know why I love that song. And my favorite line is, why would a fella want a girl like her, a girl who's merely lovely? Why can't a fella ever once prefer a girl who's merely me?
Yes. What I like about that song is with each alternate verse, they talk about how they could either murder her or maim her or
break her arm, pull her hair.
Yes, break her arms. And I'm like, interesting.
I also thought it was interesting that the fairy godmother is actually at the ball too. Like, she's there dancing and watching, which I don't remember that in any other version either.
I don't either, because there's a part where she specifically says, oh no, or maybe that's the other version. I'm like, they're all mixing in my head now.
That does tend to happen.
Yeah, and I'm like, because I really thought it was this one, because this fairy godmother in the Julie Andrews version was, for lack of a better term, a lot cheekier.
Yes,
she
definitely.
was just a lot more willing to do banana pants things. And because I think it's in this version where Julie Andrews is like, you're just going to drop me off and you're not going to go in. She's like, no, I mean, I do all of this. It's up to you to take it from here and you make it happen. So, and she's like, and plus I've been to 100 of these and I'm over it. I don't want to. But then she's in the background, like dancing and like making faces. And I'm like, look at her. She's just sneaking in everywhere.
It could have been that she just didn't want Cinderella to know she was going to be there observing.
That's true.
She could have just been secretly watching.
Yeah, that's true.
And who knows, with fairy tale rules, maybe she was invisible to everybody except the audience.
I got that feeling at one point because I don't remember where. It's towards the end when, and you know what, we'll get there when the revelation happens. I do want to talk about all that because there was a moment where I was like, it doesn't seem like she recognizes her. Anyways, we'll get there. But yes, so maybe she does dip in and out of visibility and we just don't know it.
Yeah. Well, after the whole ball thing, they go outside and she tells him that she needs to leave, but she won't tell him her name, but they still kiss and profess their love for each other.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, you get the song, Do I Love You Because You're Beautiful? And then the clock begins to strike. So it's been 25 minutes. She gotta get out of there.
Mm-hmm.
She flees, and then the prince finds the slipper next to the pumpkin.
Yes, which I thought was a nice little,
Yeah, because the
'cause-
pumpkin isn't always left behind either. I liked that
right.
in this version.
I did too. So I was like, okay. And so now he's like, cool, I've got her shoe. I don't have her name,
And her
but
pumpkin.
yes, because all those stairs, she runs off and she's running up the stairs to go out, and then up another little stairs or something, or like a little step or something to run up. And he runs after her, and he trips and falls at one point. And I was like, oh, look at that. And I'm like, well, it was a live show, so what are they going to do? But now that I know it was a dress rehearsal, I'm like, well, even so,
Yeah.
he trips up the stairs at one point when he's chasing after her. I'm like, well, that's how she gets away.
I mean, it makes sense either way, even if it was on purpose or not. I
Yeah.
kind of like that we get, if it's a blooper or whatever, I like that that's in there.
Yeah, I did too. I thought it was cool. I was like, I hope this wasn't planned. I hope it was just naturally running up the stairs and him falling, because I liked it.
Sometimes that helps things, like something unexpected happens that they leave in a movie. I
Yeah.
like when that happens.
Yes, agreed.
So then everybody gets home and they're all talking about the ball, and then you get the song, or apparently two songs, When You're Driving Through the Moonlight and A Lovely Night, which I didn't realize was two separate songs.
No, I
But
didn't
according
either.
to Wikipedia, they are two separate songs where
Okay.
Cinderella is telling her family what she imagines the ball was like. And I liked that they all sang together, because
Mm-hmm.
I have to say, this is like the least evil stepfamily in any version of Cinderella I've seen. Like, the stepmother's
Yes.
not the nicest, but they're not like awful people, aside from the fact that she's kind of enslaved. but aside
Yes.
from that, this is like the
Yes.
least evil version of this family, and I liked that they
Yes.
all sang together.
I did like that they sang this song together, because in other versions, it's just them reacting to Cinderella, what her imagination like leads her to think the ball, even though we know she was there. I mean,
Mhm.
us as the audience know that she's really talking about her night. But I do like, because, they all kind of get carried away and they all get up with her and they're like, yes, it was this. And they're all swaying and they're all like into it. And yeah, I liked it. I thought that was a cute scene.
But then I also like that they kind of snap out of it at the end.
Yes.
And the stepmother's like chastising everybody.
Yes.
And Portia says, it was nothing like that.
And
Even though it was exactly like that.
yeah.
And then you get the obligatory foot montage. And
Man.
I love that the second grader from the beginning was there.
Yes. And her foot went right in and she's like,
Yeah.
hey. And I think that was her mom or somebody that was behind her that it was like grabbing her and like, don't get out of here.
And then, even though it becomes weird later, I liked that the fairy godmother comes back and she's like trying to push things in this direction, because she's like, she shows up at their home after the stepfamily's tried on the shoes, and she's like trying to get them to find Cinderella, but Cinderella is not there.
Yes.
And I like that the fairy godmother is like actively trying to make this happen. She's not just does one magic thing and then she's gone forever. I like that she comes
Right.
back and she's like really trying to make this happen for Cinderella. Because like I've said before, like especially with the Disney version, like everybody, it's one thing that like everybody wants to criticize Cinderella for, but like the fairy godmother, even though she doesn't come back, like this is her plan.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is the fairy godmother doing this for Cinderella. And most versions, it's the fairy godmother. And you kind of get this in a few older Disney movies. Like I think it's Sleeping Beauty especially. Like it's kind of weird to think about, but like the main protagonist, more so in Sleeping Beauty than Cinderella, but it's like kind of an older lady. Like with Sleeping Beauty, it's the three good fairies. Like they're kind of the main characters, and they're the ones who are making everything happen.
Mm-hmm.
And I liked that about the Disney version, but more so in this version, because she keeps coming back and she's like actively making things happen, pushing people in this
Right.
direction. I don't know. I liked the fairy godmother a lot in this version.
Yes. I mean, because, she's standing outside the house looking in the window. It's a very large window, one of those that you can honestly just kind of lean over and you're in the house and you're like, hey. But it works because obviously, that's she's out there, and the people working for the prince, which I think it's interesting that there's some versions where the prince is involved in the shoe hunt.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's some versions that he's like, I'm desperate to find this woman. I will scour every inch of our lands, except I won't actually physically go on the hunt. I'm going to send all my people to do it for me. And then all of his little dukes and stuff do it for him, which I always find fast. I'm like, so you're super into finding her because you just don't want to do the work. Got it. Okay. But so the dukes are there in place of him searching. And they're like, is there any other, young people? And, the stepmother's like, no, of course not. This is just us. And then there's the fairy godmother outside, but looking in the window like, what about Cinderella?
Mm-hmm.
They're like, who? What? They're like, yeah, what? And so I like that. Yeah, she inserts herself and she's like, you might want to look upstairs. And she's all trying to be tricksy. And then of course they don't find her. And then there's the stepmother like looking at her all smirking like, I guess there's no one upstairs, huh?
Yeah, I wasn't quite sure why Cinderella left, because Cinderella went back to the palace for some reason.
Which is weird. It's strange. I didn't understand that either. She was just skulking around the grounds dreaming of the prince, which again, I'd never seen that before. And I was like,
yeah.
All right, listen.
Which seems illegal.
Yeah.
I feel like obviously the fairy godmother kind of rats her out to get them together.
Yes.
So it's obviously illegal if she's going to be jailed for sneaking into the palace garden.
I mean,
it just seems
that
weird.
whole moment. Yes, because there's the fairy godmother showing up again and being like, hey, she could be here to assassinate the prince. You should probably put her in jail. And I'm like, what? What are you doing?
That was kind of my reaction too.
It's like, you can't just say, look, here's a maiden you haven't tested yet. No, this woman is like, hey, listen, she could be here plotting a murder. It's so bizarre.
But then for the lulz, try the shoe on her before she goes to prison.
For real, she literally says that. She's like, wouldn't it be funny?
Yes.
If this criminal actually is the person? Ha 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 ha. It's so bizarre. I loved it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously she knew what she was doing because it worked, but it was still weird.
It was very strange. I'm like, okay, well, they did it differently back then, sure. And that's what made me think I have to watch all these other ones now because I want to see what other ones had a banana pants fairy godmother was like, throw her in jail, that'll work.
But then you get another scene that I thought was really weird, but it's only weird because I've seen so many other versions. Once the prince shows up, he realizes he's found her. We cut to the step family now waiting on her, and the stepmother is just so excited to have a princess in the family. And at first I was like, okay, why do they get to still be family? But then I was thinking, well, I guess in this version they weren't beating her or whatever. They weren't awful, so I guess okay, they can be servants in the palace, whatever.
I'm not gonna lie, I didn't like it. I really was like, what is this? No, because I like my Cinderella's vindictive. I like them where they're like, oh, I won justice. And yes,
I want them to be turned into toads.
Look, that's why I love Ever After. Man, she gets her revenge. She was like, I just want you to know that after this moment, I will never think about you again, but I'm convinced that you will think about me every day for the rest of your life. And she sends them off to be servants. And I'm like, that's the Cinderella I want. I like the vindictive ones that are like, I won, go away.
Yes.
Yeah. So I did not like this where they were all of a sudden turning and being like, they're basically like getting her ready to get married because the stepmother keeps calling up, Cinderella, do you need anything? And she's like, I need something old. And, and then the next time I need something new. And of course, borrowed and blue, we get the whole thing. And, it's in black and white, so we can't really tell, but whatever. Because at one point, one of the stepsisters was like, look at this, it's very blue. And I'm like, is it? Okay. But, I get it because it's black and white. And that's all leading up because, like you said, the stepmother's like, I cannot believe I'm going to have a daughter that's in the royal family or something like that. And I'm like, man, lady, you didn't even want to talk to her at the beginning when you said, I want to talk to my daughters. And she sat down and you're like, not you, my real daughters.
Mm-hmm. I
don't think you deserve any of this. Yeah, I'm still bitter.
Yeah, I don't think they deserve it, but I'm slightly more okay with this version than any other version of these characters that I've seen. Like
Yeah.
any other version definitely deserves some sort of horrible justice.
Yeah. They weren't, I mean, you're right. They weren't as terrible other than, keeping her enslaved.
But yes, then we end with the wedding and the fairy godmother closing with the line of her song, Impossible. And then the chorus is all singing the Do I Love You Because You're Beautiful song.
Yes.
But yeah, this was a very quick version, but I really liked it. I had some issues with weirdness, but overall I really liked this version. The Brandy one is still my favorite, but I did really like a lot of this one.
Yes. Okay. So if I were to put the three that you and I decided to watch for this series were the Brandy version, the Julie Andrews, and the Leslie Ann Warren. And if I had to rate them, I know we haven't talked about the Leslie Ann Warren one yet, but I'm going to go ahead and spoiler alert. Brandy's number 1, Leslie Ann Warren is number 2, and this one is number 3.
Oh, okay.
For me. Yes, I know.
I've got the last two switched around. The Julie
Oh.
Andrews one is my second favorite.
See, there we go. Debating. I love it.
Well, I guess we'll talk about that next time.
Yes.
But until then, do you want to let people know where they can find you if they want more from you?
Of course, you can find me on mainly just Instagram now at Which Was Better. It's a off again, on again podcast about books versus movie adaptations and various books that I read and planners and pictures of my dog. So if that's something you're into, check me out. Follow me there. And that's pretty much it.
Okay. Well, we will be back next week to talk about the Leslie Ann Warren version.
Yay.
So we'll see you then.
Yes. Okay. Bye.
Thanks for listening to Every Version Ever. If you like what you've heard, make sure to subscribe on your preferred podcast platform or to our YouTube channel. Make sure to follow my co-hosts as well, and if you want more content from us, check out one of the other podcasts in the iHeart Movies Podcast Network, or check out my brand new Patreon. My link tree, as well as any other relevant links, will be in the description. We'll be back soon with another brand new episode, so thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.